3, 2, 1. Yo guys, what's up? It's your girl Dev, and today we're going to talk about Ceroli Crisis and some of the skills based on using in Ceroli Crisis. I'm going to cover in this video about those skills, how to use them, and when it's most effective to change your specific loadout based on who you're up against. So sit back guys and enjoy. Okay, so let's get this started. Let's talk about these skills. All right, so we have 3 different types. We got your tank, your DPS, and your support role. Your tank obviously is going to consume the most damage, but you need to be very specific when you're reading these because they each have very specific roles that'll play a part as you're choosing your specific skill during each of the matches, fighting each of the bosses. Okay, so let's talk about the tank. Your tanks are negative 30% all damage dealt, all damage received is negative 10%, and enemy drawn is 20%, which is all that means is essentially you're going to do less damage, you're going to take less damage, and you are going to draw the enemy 20% more. So now you have the option to pick what kind of specific tank skills you can use. The taunt is basic. It just means that you're going to draw the enemy close to you and it is a single target. So just remember that if you want to taunt the enemy. Then you've got your secondary skills. These skills are very specific as well. Suppressing Roar, Shattered Armor, and Divine Healing. And each one has a 3, 4, and 8. Try not to do the Divine Healing because it is an 8 skill and it does take a lot longer to procure this skill. Shattered Armor is probably the most commonly used just because you are decreasing the target's defense and you are going to be able to stack this for a couple of seconds. If you have 2 tanks, you can stack these. I think you can get up to 3 times activating it before the first one runs out, so that's not that bad. But this is a single target as well. So if you have the boss into a point where it has a damage reduction, decreased damage taken, then or increased damage taken, then this way you can use a skill for that. But suppressing Roar is good too because it helps this do more damage to everybody around you for all the enemies and stuff. So if you have like mass swarms and stuff, and as a tank, you should be getting most of the swarms. But I don't use that one. Shattered Armor is probably the best. And then lastly, you've got the generic skills, the Emergency Healing and the Deadly Strike. Okay, the Emergency Healing is more meant for like if you were trying to heal your troops and you feel like you accidentally got caught outside of one of the shields in the Kiara one, this is a good one to use. And then Deadly Strike as well is there because that's just the direct damage on one specific target. So remember that. But either way, Emergency Healing is always good to have just as a secondary. I normally use Richard and Alex, so Deadly Strike is a great one for me because he's a tank and he's going to survive a lot longer, and I never really needed to use Emergency Healing. So I think Deadly Strike for me would be good. But if you don't have like a Richard or any heavy healing, then you should probably do the Emergency Healing. And all 3, tank, DPS, and support, have these generic skills, so I won't cover them again. I'll just use the DPS and support roles. Moving forward, let's talk about DPS. Okay, so you have the all damage dealt, which is 20% increase. The damage received is 20% as well. And then the enemy drawn is minus 20%. Okay, so now let's talk about that. Again, you're doing 20% more damage. You're receiving also 20% more damage. But the enemy is not going to be drawn to you. So that's a plus. Now let's talk about the actual skills. So Reckless Attack, there's your standard. Okay, so not only are you doing this kind of damage and you're receiving this damage, now it's going to be increased by you're doing 30% more damage, but now you're intaking 10% damage. So if you're the one that's being directly targeted by the boss, I would not use this skill. But if you are a heavy T5 player, or at least a strong Richard player, because you wouldn't use Richard as a DPS anyways, but if you feel like you can take as a tank, but as a DPS, then yeah, you can use a skill, especially when everybody is surrounding them, so now you're decreasing or increasing your attacks essentially to the enemy. Alright, now let's talk about the secondary skills for DPS. You have Controlled Rage, Meteor Strike, and Savage Attack. Okay, so controlled rage. You're increasing your rage. So this is great if you have if one of the bosses has increased damage done to them. That using the controlled rage, you'll be able to fire your skills off really, really fast. Now, if you're getting swarmed, this is another really good time to use it. But essentially, anytime you use these skills, you can pretty much fire them off as soon as you can get them unlocked, as long as the situation is perfect for you, where you're either going to hit mass amount of damage on multiple targets or a single target damage on the boss when he's most vulnerable. Now, Meteor Strike. Okay, deal skill damage to the current target once. Okay, that's just essentially just one single target damage for a skill damage. Okay, so there you go, 4,000, and it's cooldown 20 seconds. Savage Attack. Over 10 seconds, normal attacks will increase the damage taken by the target by 1% for 5 seconds, and you can stack this 25 times. Okay, so over 10 seconds, your standard attack will increase the damage taken. The damage taken by the target by 1%, and it's a 4. Okay, so you'd have to be able to have these skills readily available, and everybody having this specific skill running a DPS, you can do a lot of single target damage, and it's helpful, but it's not one that I use. I used controlled rage for this. Meteor Strike is really good too, but controlled rage, I feel like I can fire my skills off faster, and I use Guan Alex for a lot of my DPS, so I'm constantly firing my skills off, and it is an AoE damage as well. And then the generic skills, we're not going to go over those again. Support. Alright, so support here. All damage dealt is negative 50%, and all damage taken is increased by 30%. And your energy recovery speed, which is the amount of times you can generate these skills, is increased by 50%. So essentially now you're becoming the healer. You're the support role that needs to be able to survive through the entire match to support your allies and heal them. Okay, so here we go. Healing Light and then Blood Drinker. Healing Light, you're now going to heal your allied troops in this specific area at 15,000, which is pretty significant if you ask me. And it does have a very long cooldown, so you can probably fire this skill off twice, maybe 3 times, but definitely twice. And you're probably not going to use this right away. And then now you've got Blood Drinker. Okay, increase all allied troops damage by 30% for 30 seconds. Troops can only receive this skill once every 3 minutes. So remember that, all right? So this is only a 3-minute skill, okay? But you increase your damage you're doing to the boss by 30%. It's pretty good, but I like Healing Light because I feel like I'm playing with players that may not be experienced. So having the good Healing Light would be helpful to them to survive. Okay, secondary skills. Dazzling Land and Healing Technique. Okay, so Dazzling Land is an 8 skill. Okay, so if you pick too many skills that are high, you can't use them that frequent. All right, let's go ahead and read it though. Create a Dazzling Land of a battlefield which lasts for 10 seconds. All allied troops can enter the Dazzling Land and receive 1% of their troop strength back per second. So for up to 10 seconds, you can receive your troop strength back, whatever your troop strength was when you entered. That's okay. I'm not using that skill. It's an 8 skill, which is going to take you a lot longer to accrue those points. So I'm going to pass. Healing Technique is a great one. The target troop immediately receives 10% of their troop sync back. Okay, so here you can use this skill twice, okay? And it's only a 3. And you can heal 2 of your allies instead of using Dazzling Land, which heals everybody for 10 seconds. But what happens if they're not in the circle? They can't receive that healing. So I really like using the Healing Technique because it heals anybody that you can kind of be around. So like you can pick who needs it more, and somebody might need it more than others. And then you got your standard skills. All right, so that covers those skills. Make sure you hit save after you select them. You can always go back and change it as well, not that. Okay, so let's talk about the different times you want to use this. For the brothers here, let's go ahead and challenge, and I'll open it up. The best one to use for the brothers is actually, I like to use 2 tanks and 2 DPS, or 2 tanks, a DPS, and a support, or a tank, DPS, 2 DPS, and a support. Okay, so depending on what level you're doing this at, you can have a tank take both marches. But at Hell mode in Nightmare, it's a lot more difficult to do the one-person tank. But if you have, for Hell mode, it's good to have 2 tanks, 1 on each side, and you're just watching the map and making sure you're staying out of any of the AoE, and that you target Sun first. And if you have the 2 tanks there, you can have 3 people on the left and 1 on the right. That way you're separating the 2 bosses away from the AoE from everybody else, and you're able to control the situation a lot better and continue putting mass amount of damage on one boss on the left. Sun, he takes the most damage. I think you should try to focus on hitting Sun. Okay, but we'll go over that stuff later. DPS, again, I'm not going to use that for this one, but I like to run tank. All right, let's see. Let's move to Freda. I like Freda. She's pretty cool. Okay, Freda. Here we go. So for her, you can use a good tank. DPS and support is good for this. DPS is definitely really good, especially for all the little guys. You can do the increased rage because they spawn a bunch of those little troops. The tank is good, but not really necessary. I definitely think the DPS and support roles are a little bit better here than the tank. And then Kiara. Okay, so Kiara is good as well as a tank, but she does a lot better with the DPS and support roles. You can even do all 4 DPS, but having 3 DPS and a support might help because you don't really need a tank for this because you don't need to do, she's not really focused on one person. She is, but she isn't. I really don't think it really matters a whole bunch. And plus you're going to be moving around a lot and moving to the shields. So having a 3 DPS and a support role, the support for the healing, if they get caught outside of the bubble, so maybe even having 2 supports might be better as well. And lastly, we have Astrid. She is probably my favorite, okay? But for this one needs a very specific type of troops. So you can have it in 2 ways. You can have 2 tanks and 2 DPS, okay? Or you can have 1 tank, 2 DPS, and a support. But either way, the way this one is normally done is that if you have 2 tanks, you have 1 tank start in the beginning, and you get all of her AoE on her, because she has this AoE that causes a debuff, right? And the debuff stacks. And if you have too much of the debuff, and then when she changes phases and goes into her attack phase or red phase, and you are using the taunt, and you are the tank, and you have the stacks, you're going to get wrecked, okay? It's very much recommended that you have 2 tanks, or have somebody else, like a support role, your DPS role, take the first strike. So that way, because they can't taunt, but that way they can use their standard skills to just put a lot of damage on her, but take that debuff so that when the tank comes in and uses the taunt, now they're taking all the direct damage from her. And inside that AoE that she has, that half moon AoE that can wreck you if you have the debuff, and now the tank doesn't have the debuff. The only problem is that only really works for 1 phase. After that, the tank does need to run or move very quickly around so that they don't get hit again, because that AoE that she puts out on her red damage phase is extremely deadly. So just be very careful when you're doing that. But that covers it for the 4 bosses for Ceroli Crisis. We still don't have the last one unlocked. Let's talk quickly about the rewards. So let's go take a look at the shop. The Kiara Sculptures is what I buy every time I come into this shop. I always buy her because I want to expertise her and want to try her in Ceroli Crisis as expertise. I really think she'll be really good. She's also a really good peacekeeping commander too with her AoE. And there's a couple of really good things in here, but not a whole lot. There are some very awesome rewards that you get for completing Ceroli Crisis. I'm going to flash them on my screen right now. And these chests that you get are actually pretty cool. You come with 7 fragments when you complete it on Hell mode. You get those coins, but you get these fragment pieces. You get 15 fragment pieces, and it apparently is a choice chest. But I completed all of the Hell mode scenarios, and I got over 60 fragment chests to really pick from. But essentially, it's a 60 Ceroli Crisis chests. And then you have to open them, and they open up into fragment piece chests. Well, actually kind of cool to get that many fragment pieces. The only downside is they are fragments. So you do have to make the blueprints. But with it being a pick one chest, you get the option to pick what you want, which is actually a lot better, in my opinion, than just forcing you to pick or doing random drops. But I hope that covers it. I did want to end capture everything with Ceroli Crisis. I love doing it. I actually spent the past couple of days after I completed a Ceroli, and I don't have any reports here, but I did complete the last couple of days doing Ceroli Crisis on my main account and just helping the little guys, doing easy, normal, and hard, because I love doing it and I love supporting other players. And sometimes it's really hard, and I have T5, and I feel like I can really help out as much as possible. They have an in-chat option now, so I send an in-chat option. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. Let me tank. Let me do this, and that way I can help them get through Ceroli and get completed. It's really cool. I like doing it, and I'm probably going to continue doing it until the end of Ceroli Crisis. So I hope to see you guys out there. But that's going to cover it for this video. Thanks so much for tuning in and learning about Ceroli. If you learned something, that's great. If you didn't, I mean, that's okay too. Thank you for watching. But don't forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring that bell for any time I'm doing any live streaming or dropping any brand new content. I got some bunch of stuff planned coming up, so stay tuned for that. So for now, guys, just keep it real.